Hello. On today's show, I'll be talking with Mike Utley. He was a WSU football player who played for the Detroit Lions and had a spinal cord injury. It's been 30 years since the injury. He's here to talk about the progress he's made in many facets of his life, including his foundation, from that time to today. Good to have you on the show, Mike. I did the math, and I think it's been about 4 years too long since we've talked.
Good deal. No, you look great.
Yeah, you too. It's good to see you. Good to know that you and Dani are doing well, and good to have you back. So for the people who watch the show, so now that I'm recording it via Zoom and we play it online, people can watch it anywhere. So although people here know and love your story, and no one gets tired of hearing from you, let's talk to the people perhaps who don't know your story and go back and tell a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself, Mike Utley.
Yes. Again, my name is Mike Utley. I'm a former Washington State Cougar, All-American out there, and a former Detroit Lion. November 17th, 1991, I was blocking a defensive player for the Rams, and he went up and went to take his legs out. I hit my head on the turf and broke my C5, 6, 7. So I'm a C5, 7 quad.
And the work, we're going to get to the work you've done ever since then and the inspiration you give to people. The last time that you were on my show was when you surprised a friend of mine, Mark Huguenin, who'd been recently paralyzed, and his wife. You surprised them, and she has talked about what an incredible help you and Dani have been to both of them, just in terms of navigating the everyday life. And I mean, Dani was like in there after the interview was done, helping her, like, this is how you organize meds. This is how you organize your day. This is how you help him. There's some stuff he wants to do himself, and there's some stuff you got to figure out what he wants help with. And just the logistics of their day was enhanced by your contribution.
Well, I'm glad there's no reason to reinvent the dang wheel, for God's sake. So, guys and gals have helped me in my past, and it's just the responsibility of us, being good American patriots, is to pay it forward, help those you can, help those who are willing to help themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And Mark's one of those guys helping himself. That's good. And take me back. Sometimes I think the more success we've had, or the further we get away from that initial success, we forget, or we don't share as much about it. But your transition from WSU to the draft, you must still remember the draft day.
Oh, most definitely. You look back on those days, being picked. Of all the football players out there in the nation and around the world, athletes around the world, and I was 59th player picked. Not number one, but I was still 59th picked in the nation. So I feel good about it. I'm proud about it. But you know what? Life goes on.
Yeah. And so when you made the transition into professional football, how long did you play before your injury?
I was 3 years. I came out and started 1989. It was Barry Sanders, John Ford, myself, top three draft choices. I came out, started as a rookie. I broke my leg the fifth game. Came back in 1990. Started the third all preseasons games. Broke 2 ribs. Came back, started again. Separated my right shoulder, and then came back, started again, and separated my right hip, and that was 1990. And then came back and started again, all 11 games of 1991, and then the 11th game of the season, I first played the fourth quarter, broke my neck.
So any of those injuries leading up to your spinal cord injuries did not deter you from the field?
Lisa, people bring that up to me all the time.
Sorry, I have to ask.
My dad goes, boy, of my 4 kids, you ain't the brightest star in the sky. But you know what, Lisa? I love the game. I love the competition. I love the battering, the hazing, and that kind of stuff that goes along with being an athlete and being in there. And again, when you step across that white line, it's the best men in the world compete against one another. And for those 3 years, I was one of the 28 best men, in the on the Detroit Lions, in the nation, being a right guard, starting right guard.
And so when you say after all of these years that you wouldn't change a thing. I believe you.
Well, I would change one thing, and that's the play right before. I
Right?
probably would have had a hamstring twinge or
Something.
it is again, Lisa. It's the game. It's the the camaraderie that we have, the violence of the game, and everything else. It just made football what it is back then and what it still is today.
When I think about the things that make us who we are, the hardships and the triumphs and the joys and the heartache, all of the things. I recently, it was my late husband's birthday, and I was thinking about it, and I've thought this before. Our son is now 22 years old. His dad passed when he was 5, and I'm a cancer survivor. His dad had an illness that was unexpected at 35. We would still, I know, and I can speak for him and say, we would live every day of our lives the same to end up with that specific kid.
Sure.
With everything that's happened, he was meant to be on this planet with us as a gift to us. So when you look at the things that have happened in your life and this domino of the gifts that have added up since that day when you were injured, what are the things that stand out to you in the forefront of those gifts?
When you say gifts, you know what it is? That I chose wisely and I had great parents. When people talk about role models, it was called Frank and Irene Utley. That they were the boots, on the backside when I needed it, the warmth and communicating a mom, and the discipline and love from dad. And that's what makes young men is having the ability to have love and discipline from the top down.
And so now as you're, so it's been how long? 30 years since your injury.
Right.
And when you think, in that moment when you were injured, let me rephrase this. In that moment when you were injured, your thoughts, I remember you telling me once before, your thoughts were about your parents watching and trying to, I don't want to say hold it together because you're a guy who would hold it together, but what was that moment like, and how are you trying to maneuver it? Like, how are you trying to show your parents that you were okay? I don't know why I'm stumbling over this, but I'm just trying to get to the words that I remember you shared with me years ago.
Well, the bottom line is, at that moment, when I got hurt and I lost muscle strength, I've lost sensation through my bodies, my hands, and my hamstrings before, damaging the neck and pulling the nerves and that kind of stuff. But Lisa, this time I lost strength, and I broke a promise to myself when I broke my leg that a man walks on the field of battle, he walks off the field of battle. And by God dang it, I broke a promise to myself. That was number one. But the other thing is hearing the fellas saying, "Hey, Mike, we're going to get this for you." And then you hear the crowd and everything else like that. And I know my parents were watching, and my cousins were in the stands and so on and so forth. I knew they was going to get back to them, and I just wanted to convey to them and everyone else that I would be back. That's why I gave the thumbs up. And again, I've been through injuries before, and my parents have watched me, get through this and fight through it. And it's part of the game. My parents knew football is a violent sport, and I have no regrets. And they understand that I chose to play. I chose to cross that white line, and I did, and I will take full responsibility for it.
That's what I figured you'd say. Something like that, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I remember us talking about it years ago, and the thumbs up, and let's segue into that. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about your foundation and the work you've done since that time. We're talking with Mike Utley. We'll be back in just a moment. We're talking with Mike Utley. He's sharing the story of his injury when playing for the Detroit Lions. It's been 30 years, Mike, and you've been in the Wenatchee Valley for a good while now,
Yeah.
and people are familiar with you and your story. What I wanted to talk about now is your wife, Dani, who anyone who knows you knows how amazing she is, and how you came to meet her, because you had lived in Colorado. Tell me about that. You lived in Colorado, and then how was your life there? And then you made the decision to move up this way.
Correct. You know, when I first got hurt, I was a month in Detroit, and then 3.5 months at Craig Hospital in Denver, Colorado. And just learning as a spinal cord, I wanted to make sure I stayed around the hospital. And so I got an apartment in Colorado for 6 years and never medically needed the doctors or the rehab place. And so I just one day decided that it was time for me to get back to the state. And I had some friends, and I told them, I said, I'm looking for a place on the water. And there it is, there in Orondo. I bought a place and moved out there. And that was April of '98. And July, I started training at Gold's Gym with Blair McKinney, and happened to be working there. And he's training Danielle, right before me. And from that point on, he had googly eyes for the big guy.
So then when you moved here, you had a nurse full time in Colorado that was basically taking care of your daily needs with you.
Yep.
And so from the time you woke up to the time you went to bed, you had that help.
Yep.
When you moved here, you no longer had that help.
Correct. I was on my own.
And what was the decision making there? What made you decide to go from 24-hour help, or at least waking hours help, to none?
Well, I wanted independence. Like I told my mom, I said, Mom, I'm going to live or die trying, and I want my independence back. And I flew in from Colorado to the state of Washington by myself, and I've learned to survive ever since.
You learn by doing, right?
Yep.
I mean,
yep. That was it. I wanted my independence back, and I left Colorado without anybody there to fly in to figure this out on my own. I was going to live or die on my own.
and I wonder, I mean, looking back, in hindsight, it was a bit of preparation for even meeting Dani, because getting to have that, excuse me, teaching yourself that independence and not having anyone you relied upon. So I'm guessing when you guys came into a relationship together, it wasn't like she was filling the role of your nurse, obviously, because
Right.
you figured it out for yourself.
Right. And that's what people, Dani being a medic, or, now a retired flight medic and the deputy coroner, she was, what I wanted. She was, the gal to date as a girlfriend, now the wife, but back then it was a girlfriend atmosphere, and that's what I wanted. I didn't want a caregiver.
Yeah, that makes sense. Complete sense. At what point after your injury did you and Dani start the foundation and start to have a vision for the work you wanted to do for people and for, toward research and all the things? Tell us a bit about the foundation, the name of it, and what its mission is.
Well, actually, we started the Mike Utley Foundation in 1992. And the reason why I originally started, it's because my parents, when they went to go find out, about spinal cord injury a little bit more, even though my mom was a retired RN, she knew what was, the basics. But there was no information for my friends and family to go. And that's what we wanted to start right then and there's a place where people can go to get to somebody to give them the ABCs about spinal cord injury, and some options of where to go, what the opportunities are. Because a lot of people at that time, when travesty happens, people make decisions on emotion of where to go, where to do the rehab. And usually, Lisa, sorry to say, it's they stay local. And that's not the place to have life-threatening situations. Not that the people aren't local for whatever reason, wherever you're at, they're not good. There's better places to go for travesty, and what you need to do is, that particular time in your life, you need to do what's right for you, because if you're not around and you're not standing on your game, you can't take care of anybody else around you. And that's what we started the foundation for. Number one, research is going to get more people help. Then it's rehabilitation. That's for you as an individual person, so you can be a productive part of society. And the last one is education, not only the patient, but the community around, about spinal cord injuries and what's good about it, what's bad about it, what people need to do for the future. So the Mike Utley Foundation, research, education, and rehabilitation are the three facets of the Mike Utley Foundation.
I worked with you years ago when I was at KPQ in the radio station and doing community relations work, and you had your Dam to Dam ride. That went on for many years, raised a lot of money.
7 years, yeah.
Yeah, 7 years for your foundation. And in the people that you've encountered through the foundation, what, for example, there's a woman that I follow on Instagram who is a huge advocate for wheelchair safety when flying, because she's had her wheelchair damaged multiple times, and they think, oh, they'll just order you a new one, and that's not the way it works. And I've been known to call a person out who parks in the parking spot that belongs to you when they shouldn't. And literally every time I see it, I have to say something. And that was based on just this short experience of Wesley being in a wheelchair and having people park there when they're not supposed to. So whatever it is, you pick your passion that you're going to work toward. And with your passion toward education and making sure people know about their options in rehab, can you give us a couple examples of the people who've been impacted or relationships you've built with people in your situation who may have done it differently, but because they met you, they took your advice and did it the way you suggest?
Yep, I got a perfect example. Number one is Mike Bruckert. Everyone knows Mike Bruckert back then. When he first got injured, he went to the Seattle, for the rehab and all that kind of stuff, and the military, his background and stuff. But there was a time where a local gal friend asked me to go see him. And I did, and he was with his son over in Seattle. And Mike will tell you the story, the same as I'm telling you today. He went in, and I introduced myself, and we sat there and talked. And he struggled, what negative thoughts he had about this whole spinal cord, breaking his, back and having the rods in his back. And, it was about 15 minutes long. And Lisa, I couldn't take it anymore. And so I just laid into him about the dam's coming up. You're going to go borrow a bike from the Seattle VA. And he goes, well, I can only ride a mile. I said, by God dang it, you don't ride a mile. And he goes, well, I said, you're going to go there and you're going to thank everyone that has ever supported you up until this point, encourage you to, move forward. And he hemmed and hawed a little bit. I said, listen, you got a deal. I said, I came out here, you're going to thank everybody else, and you're going to ride in that bike tour. And so by God dang it, Lisa, he came out, and not only did he ride a mile, he rode the first 12 and a half for the 25-mile turnaround. And he was waiting on me, and his statement goes, well, what took you so long? And from this day forward,
it was a turning point for him, I'm sure.
It was a turning point for him. And the biggest deal is that now he's successful. He rides with other guys, and he's the VA Olympian, champion, weightlifting, and rides his bike. And this is it's one person, one man dealing with one man together and making a difference. And now he's paying it forward for all the encounters he works with other people, guys and gals, able-bodied and disabled. So it's through the foundation, we reach out to people like this all the time and encourage them, what to do and how truly, life is, how important it is to live every day.
To live fully. Yeah, that's a really good story and a great example, because for one of those, there's so many more you could tell.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. We were talking with Mike Utley. We'll be back in just a moment. We are finishing up with Mike Utley. Mike, I always enjoy speaking with you. I don't want it to be 4 years next time before we talk again. You always have terrific insight. And what I'd like for you to do now is just leave us with some words of encouragement, whether they are people who are going through something similar like you, or people who are struggling with things that have nothing to do with health, but maybe mental health and other challenges that people are facing these days. What is your advice? You're the guy who tells people to get up and get on with it.
Well, life's worth living. That's number one. But I tell people, as an athlete, you may get knocked down 7, 8, 9, 10 times, but it's what you do after that last time you get knocked down is when you get up, dust the old dust, dirt off your boots and get going again. And that's what life is. And again, young men, you need to be a role model. If you start a family, you need to be there for your wife. And one day, God bless it, you have children, you need to be there for them. And we all face adversity. I understand that. It's what you do with this adversity that creates your character. And I tell people, men, learn to leave a 100-year legacy about what you do today. Gals, it's the same thing. Leave a legacy of what you want to be known by. And again, remember, your reputation is going to precede you. What kind of reputation do you want?
You mentioned the 100 years. And when I founded the Don't Wait Project, I think a lot of people looked at it like a bucket list. If I died tomorrow, what would I do today? And you and I both know if we knew we were gone tomorrow, we wouldn't be talking to each other. Right. You'd be with your family and I'd be with mine. But instead of a bucket list, let's assume we're here for 100 years. What are we doing with that time? That's what I like people to think about, is not the doom of hurry and get stuff done because you might not be here tomorrow. Let's just assume that we're blessed with a long life, or whatever amount of time we have. What are we going to do with that time? And you are a shining example of living a don't wait life. I love stories like this. And I just hope people watching will heed your advice and follow in your footsteps.
Well, Lisa, I appreciate your time and energy and the folks in, the Wenatchee Valley, but across this country. Make a difference. This is the greatest country in the whole wide world. Be a patriot, pay it forward of our blessings from our forefathers. Let people look back on your life and say, you know what, this young lady or this young man made a difference.
Well, and your patriotic flag back there didn't go unnoticed.
Oh, thank you.
I know what a patriot you are. Well, thank you again, Mike, for being here. Please say hello to Dani for me. Yes. Take good care of yourselves. And again, I always wish you the very, very best.
Thank you very much. God bless.
Take care.
Hello. There's a surprise.
Oh, boy. How you doing? Good, sir. Absolutely. Yeah. God, you look great, man. I'm telling you. Absolutely.